Every now and then in South African politics, a story breaks that does more than just grab headlines. It exposes the cracks running through our system, the deeper struggles over power, money, and the idea of transformation itself. Right now, one of those stories is unfolding around Pieter Groenewald, the longtime Freedom Front Plus leader who recently stepped down to focus on his ministerial duties in correctional services. A group of ANC-linked tenderpreneurs, who have allegedly benefited from billions in contracts within that very department, are now calling for his dismissal. Their reason? They accuse him of being fundamentally opposed to Black economic empowerment, the cornerstone of South Africa's transformation agenda. But peel back the surface, and the fight seems less about ideology and more about entrenched networks of money and influence fighting for survival. To understand why this matters, we need to step back and look at how South Africa's economy was structured before and after 1994. Apartheid created one of the most unequal societies in the world, where wealth and opportunities were overwhelmingly in white hands, while the majority was locked out of ownership and business. The democratic government faced an enormous challenge. How do you redress centuries of exclusion while still keeping the economy afloat? The answer came through measures like affirmative action and Black economic empowerment. At its heart, BE was meant to shift ownership and access so that previously disadvantaged South Africans could participate in a meaningful way. It was not only about handing out shares, but also about creating skills and supporting small businesses. On paper, it promised a new economic order, one that could balance redress with growth. But the practice hasn't matched the principle. By the early 2000s, criticisms were mounting. Civil society groups, unions, and respected leaders like Archbishop Desmond Tutu warned that BE had drifted into Black elite enrichment. The same politically connected figures were recycling themselves through boardrooms, while millions of ordinary people stayed in poverty. That critique resonates even more today, as tender scandals and state capture have made South Africans skeptical of whether transformation is really for the people or the powerful few. If you walk through townships or rural areas, you will hear the same frustration. Jobs remain scarce, inequality has barely moved, and the so-called benefits of empowerment seem to flow in the wrong direction. Pieter Groenewald has long argued that BE, as applied, is not broad empowerment, but a feeding scheme for the connected. His party, the Freedom Front Plus, often takes controversial stances on race-based policies, but his criticism has struck a chord with South Africans frustrated by corruption. In his role as Minister of Correctional Services, he has intensified his fight against irregular contracts, suspending hundreds of officials and clamping down on procurement. His push for bakery and farming projects within prisons, generating millions in savings, has disrupted a chain of tenders that benefited private networks. For those who relied on such deals, he has now become a direct threat. Imagine a scenario where a business was used to supplying prisons with bread at inflated prices, only to see Greenwald launch prison bakeries producing millions of loaves at a fraction of the cost. That is money that no longer lines private pockets, and it explains why some are so determined to paint him as an enemy of transformation. From the other side, however, critics argue that without strong empowerment policies, South Africa risks deepening inequality. They say Greenwald's views cannot be separated from the history of his party, and that his critiques, even if valid, come from a place of resisting transformation rather than fixing it. In their eyes, dismantling BE, even partially, is dangerous because it threatens to undo hard-won efforts to correct centuries of exclusion. This tension lies at the heart of the controversy. Is BE salvageable through reform, or does it need to be replaced with something entirely new? This isn't just about Greenwald. Analysts suggest it is a battle over the political economy of South Africa itself. On one side is the ideal of redress and inclusion, on the other the reality of elite capture. When tenderpreneurs tied to ANC networks demand his dismissal, the question becomes whether they are defending transformation or defending contracts. For the public, it raises real frustrations. Why hasn't BE reduced inequality meaningfully? Why do the same families appear in every big deal while unemployment soars? And can redress and accountability exist together? The controversy echoes other major scandals in our politics, where policies with noble intentions became vehicles for looting instead of empowerment. Looking forward, several outcomes are possible. Calls for Greenwald's removal could test the coalition government's balance, or the debate could push policymakers to restructure empowerment policies. Some suggest targeting poverty directly through class-based criteria, investing in education, and growing small enterprises rather than revolving everything around state tenders. Others call for stricter monitoring of contracts, with real-time transparency and harsher penalties for corruption, so that BE can serve its intended purpose. Whether the political will exists for such reforms remains uncertain, especially with local elections around the corner and political factions competing to control the narrative. For now, Greenwald is standing his ground, continuing raids and reforms within correctional services while denouncing what he calls the abuse of empowerment. His stance resonates with citizens angry at corruption, but his critics remain equally firm, framing the fight as a defense of transformation. This tug-of-war will not end soon, and it could shape political debates heading into the 2026 local elections. At its core, the controversy is about what kind of transformation South Africa truly wants. Is it transformation for a handful of elites, or for the millions still locked out of the economy? Is it about tenders and contracts, or building skills and jobs? These questions go beyond one politician and one department. They strike at the country's vision for justice and prosperity. And they ask whether South Africans will settle for symbolic progress or demand real, tangible change in their daily lives. Thanks for staying with me through this deep dive. If you found this discussion valuable, please subscribe, share this video, and let me know in the comments what you think. Can BE still deliver real empowerment? Or does South Africa need a new approach altogether? Let's keep the conversation alive, because the future of transformation belongs to all of us.